This briefing allows members an insight into initial proposals for the redevelopment of the site, with first intentions to devise a framework/master plan to help steer new development proposals coming forwards in the future. Discussions have recently commenced between the LPA and REL/Bidwells, and therefore the proposals are at an early stage. The summary details have been set out in the briefing note forwarded to councillors by the council's case officer, Dean Scrivener. Dean, would you like just to say hello to everyone?
Hello. I'm Dean Scrivener. I'm a principal planner at Greater Cambridge, and I've been involved with the Cambridge Retail Park thus far. Discussions are still early going, but hopefully this will give you a good overview as to what is coming forwards.
That's great, thanks, Dean. So Dean's going to be taking most of the work that comes forward on the retail park, and I think we're likely to have a detailed proposal for 230 Newmarket Road with a good wind come to the next city planning committee. But Dean is working very closely with the two other case officers that we have, Andrew Martin and Juma Ahmed, who are leading on Beehive. So the briefing today will be led by the developer REL/Pen and their consultants, including Bidwells. The briefing will be structured with a 20 to 30 minute slot for a presentation, followed by a similar amount of time for questions, if not slightly longer, if we can do that. In a minute, I will ask the developer team to introduce themselves, but first, some housekeeping for everyone. Dean, could you, if you haven't, could you start recording? I think you have actually, haven't you? Thank you.
Yeah, I have, yeah.
So it's the meeting's being recorded, and members should treat the meeting as if it is a public meeting. The details of the meeting can be subject to a freedom of information request or similar. Can I ask all participants to keep themselves muted and to keep your backgrounds blurred unless you're invited to speak? If members would like to ask a question or get the attention of the chair, please raise your virtual hand in Teams. We'll deal with the questions, if that's okay, after the presentation has finished. Members of Planning Committee should not express an opinion upon any aspect of today's presentation which might give rise to a view that you have a closed mind to the emerging proposal. The recording of the meeting will be available for public viewing for 6 months from the date of the meeting. So I think we have an apology from Mike Todd-Jones, as you said earlier, Councillor Smart. I don't have any other apologies. Are there any other declarations of interest at all? Doesn't seem that way. Okay, so members, if you could please turn off your cameras, and I'll hand over to the developer team to introduce yourselves and begin your presentation. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Peter Beck, and I work for a company called Ridgelift, and we act for REL/Pen as their development managers. Thank you for your time today to discuss the Cambridge Retail Park, or CRP for short. REL/Pen is one of the UK's largest and most established pension funds, playing a significant role in Cambridge's development. We're committed to delivering some of the most sustainable projects in the area, and have already built strong relationships with stakeholders and community groups to support the city's economic, social and cultural success. Given the evolving retail landscape, there is no longer sufficient occupier demand to sustain both Beehive Centre and CRP as retail destinations. With this in mind, and acknowledging that Beehive Centre does not have a viable future as a retail park, we are moving forward with a framework to focus on CRP. This includes facilitating the transition of key Beehive tenants and securing the long-term retail success of CRP. In addition to supporting retail occupiers and maintaining the shops that people value and enjoy, we are focused on improving the overall experience of the park and encouraging longer dwell times. The process of transitioning beehive retailers is already underway, and our framework is designed to ensure the process is efficient, informed, and well coordinated. To date, we have achieved the following. We have secured tenants, B&M and Starbucks, who are relocating within CRP, and we're in advanced negotiations with Asda, Currys, who are also relocating within CRP, Wren, M&S, TK Maxx, Next, and Pets at Home. CRP is a highly constrained site. As relatively recent owners of the park, Railpen has had to navigate numerous existing occupational leases, each with varying terms and restrictions. And these include parking numbers and locations, no build and visibility restrictions, primarily visibility from Newmarket Road, and anti-compete clauses. But despite these challenges, we're committed to making CRP into a better retail destination with more shops, improved amenities, enhanced public spaces, and better connectivity. David will now outline our vision and the steps we will take to deliver it. Thank you. David.
Thank you, Peter. I'm David Leonard of Leonard Design Architects, and actually just before I get going, I'll be showing you lots of slides and images, and I'll be summarising the text on them as well. And I'd just like to say we're more than happy for you to have a copy of it afterwards. So Railpen, of course, own Cambridge Retail Park and the Beehive Centre next to it. And as Peter has said, of course, with the changing face of retail, the Beehive Centre's future is not as a retail park. And in order to comprehensively redevelop the Beehive, though, some consolidation, of course, needs to happen. And there are several key retailers there who will need to relocate onto Cambridge Retail Park. And those retailers are those who want to stay in Cambridge. They're popular with residents. And during our public consultations on the Beehive last year, many of the retailers were regularly referred to. The Beehive Centre is changing, and Railpen's proposal to create a new innovation hub for life sciences and research and development and laboratories here, with an active ground floor plane and a nature-led public realm, will be transformational. And by relocating existing retailers across to Cambridge Retail Park, this represents a sort of fantastic opportunity to consolidate all the large format retailers into one city destination. And that will be increasing its attractiveness there, densifying and adding critical mass to the site. It'll be widening the range of uses and activities there, and with the ability to address some of the urban design and highways issues that the area currently faces. Now, Railpen recognises the importance of Cambridge Retail Park as a valued retail asset in Cambridge, and have commissioned the creation of this framework plan to ensure that the projects are developed and brought forward in a sort of holistic and coordinated way. Firstly, of course, that it meets the needs of the city and local communities and retailers, but secondly, that it is able to help transform the character of Newmarket Road and Coldham's Lane. And thirdly, and crucially, it has a cohesive approach which ensures that Cambridge Retail Park would remain operational and open for business throughout its delivery. So the framework plan would then be followed by a series of coordinated planning applications. So Cambridge Retail Park will soon be the only one of its kind in Cambridge due to the changing retail environment that we've been explaining. And it's an essential large format retail destination which keeps retail spend within the city, and it complements and supports the city centre. And crucially, there is nowhere else for the retailers from the Beehive to go, as the city centre can't cater for these sizes of retailers and their requirements. Just a couple of things and features about the site itself. Firstly, about 80% of the site is actually historic landfill from an old clay quarry that was historically there, and in parts is over 20 metre deep in some of its places. And secondly, the Newmarket Road and the Coldham's Lane boundaries have established mature tree planting. Several of those have tree preservation orders. And there are several legal constraints, as Peter was saying, and those are associated with some of the tenancies that we need to work with, and some are lasting for the next 10 to 20 years. And they cover things like visibility and lines of sight, and they cover things like minimum parking numbers and tenant no build zones, and a requirement for a specified area of surface parking, for example. When you map out and respond to the constraints, you can see the opportunity areas that present themselves, are mostly sites along Newmarket Road and Coldham's Lane. And that's fantastic, of course, for addressing some of the townscape issues. On here, indicated in red, are a new catering pavilion for relocating Starbucks, which actually starts on site imminently in the next few days or so. And also 110,000 square feet of new quality offices at 230 Newmarket Road, which, as Toby said, goes to planning committee soon. So Cambridge Retail Park is actually the second most visited shopping destination after the city centre. And with its large format stores, it is actually unique and will be the only one in future. It does have some competition. There are, I think, 4 other retail parks surrounding Cambridge, although they're all smaller and they're all located between about 13.5 and 21 miles away. Cambridge Retail Park's role as a location for big box retail and leisure will, we think, become more important in the context of the changing role of the Beehive. And the proposal adds about 165,000 square feet of retail and leisure and entertainment, cafes and restaurants, which would take Cambridge Retail Park to about 485,000 square feet. The number of units will go from 17 to 26, and the average unit size actually would remain remarkably unchanged at just over 18,500 square feet per unit. And in addition to that, and on top of that, there is a new apart hotel proposed on Coldham's Lane, and another as yet unspecified opportunity site on Newmarket Road as well. And the redeveloped Beehive itself will actually also have around 50,000 square feet of its own retail, cafes, restaurants and community users, but their units on average will be much, much smaller in size, just over 3,000 square foot a unit. So Cambridge Retail Park's strengths at the moment are, of course, that it is to be the only big box destination in Cambridge. It's popular, it's well known, it complements the city centre by providing large format stores that generally can't find space in the city centre, and it keeps spending within the city. Now, its weaknesses, of course, and there are a lot of them, they include poor placemaking, poor connectivity, and environment for cycles and pedestrians, and the sheer expanse of surface car parking. And those strengths and weaknesses spread across all of Cambridge's 4 Cs of community and connectivity and climate and character. We had a session with the design review panel last week, and that session highlighted the major opportunity for enhancing landscape and connectivity and ensuring that there is a coordinated approach with the principles we've established already with the Beehive proposals. There are opportunities here to greatly improve connectivity and facilities for pedestrians and for cyclists, to activate underutilised space and improve public realm with a variety of seating and planting. There are opportunities for new outside uses, culture, activities, leisure and outside dining, with varying scales of play and greening to increase biodiversity, tree planting, and also the experience of nature. And there will be new facades and frontages for the new retailers, interactive play and community, and quiet space and space for pop-up events and lighting and graphics and public art. And there are a series of sort of step-by-step strategies which will sit behind the framework plan. And the strategy plans outline the step-by-step approach to building up the framework for Cambridge Retail Park, outlining broad principles and key moves for subsequent planning applications. And the approach, of course, is underpinned by a consistent environmental strategy for the site, including moving Cambridge Retail Park to an all-electric approach to energy sustainable travel, landscape, water, etc. strategies. So firstly, there are a series of existing vehicle entry points to the site for access to parking and servicing, and also to the yellow box storage units outside of Railpen's ownership next to the railway line. And Athol will follow me after this piece and talk about all of these and the opportunities for improving crossings and the city's aspirations for improvements to Newmarket Road and to Coldham's Lane. And the framework needs to work with existing long-term legal and tenancy constraints, as we said, such as no build zones, the parking and visibility, and at all times ensuring that Cambridge Retail Park is able to remain open for business during the delivery process. And then working within these constraints, projects are actually already coming forward that positively contribute to the makeup of the framework. The Starbucks Pavilion, with its landscape and play space, and BMM are already relocating from the Beehive into an empty unit on Cambridge Retail Park. We also have 230 Newmark Road and the Beehive coming to Planning Committee soon. And the framework needs to respond to the transformation of the Beehive, and many of the landscape principles will have a consistent approach across both the sites that we've been working on. We intend to fix permeability by extending the Beehive Greenway through Cambridge Retail Park too, transforming pedestrian and cycle routes and improving crossings, and connecting the Beehive with the Riverside and the Chisholm Trail and the wider community. And all this would be phased to be delivered before the Beehive Greenway itself is able to open. And the Cambridge Retail Park Greenway creates the opportunity to enhance placemaking and character, connectivity and activity across Cambridge Retail Park, and also an art trail with inspiration perhaps from the Dinky robots and Dinky doors, improving the character and performance of existing retail spine and giving longevity to the existing asset. And several Beehive retailers will be able to relocate into existing units, which you can see in the orange on the main spine here, which will be modified where necessary to meet their current requirements, including, for example, trading on mezzanines. And in order to be able to create new space for development, we must, of course, consolidate surface car parking into two multi-storey car parks, one to the north and one to the south, which will free up space for development and public realm and pedestrian and cycle routes, and making better use of the space available and reducing the amount of overall surface car parking that there is on the site itself. And then we can create those new development parcels on Newmarket Road and on Coldham's Lane, densifying the site and repairing and reinforcing the streetscape and improving placemaking and creating legible thresholds into Cambridge Retail Park and taking Coldham's Lane from a road to a street. So Athol, I think I'll hand over to you now, if that's okay.
Thank you, David. Thank you all for inviting us here today. My name is Athol Noon, and I'm from a firm called Markides Associates, and we are doing the transportation planning with the team of the site. In much the same way as David's explained that there's the land use framework that we're working towards, this is our introduction to you of a transport framework that's coordinated with that land use. Obviously, David's mentioned some of the key issues currently, that it's car-dominated, big box retail with consequential, high car use for that kind of use. It's low density, wide spaces of tarmac, poor conditions for walking and cycling, and the transport is dominated by the car, the look and the feel of it, and everything else is moving it towards it. But obviously, as David pointed out, these are really important local retail facilities that we want local people to use more and use in a more sustainable way. We also know from consultation and other discussions that there are some particular local issues to consider. So, example, obviously the wider impacts on Newmarket Road and Coldham's Lane. There's some through traffic movement on the site, and we have to think about what impact that has and what to do about that. We know that sometimes the car parks are used for some football parking, and we know that there's some uncontrolled parking nearby. And as we work through the plans for the site, we will be looking at these issues together with the county and the city to find a way. There's lots of transport opportunities. Basically, it's a good location to keep core retail uses in inner Cambridge, with an easy walking and cycling range of many residents and employees, and close to bus services. So there's a potential to reduce the need to travel and have more sustainable travel choice. There'll be a greater mix of units, more food and beverage and leisure with different trip profiles and uses, more local customers and linked trips between shops, and better permeability and links to adjacent areas as shown by David. And obviously the look and the feel of the centre will change over time. And we want to build on the other local plans for transport from GCP, the city and the Beehive, etc. So the aim from a transport point of view is, a new generation retail and leisure destination with sustainable transport links. Underpinning it all will be a transport strategy, which will be made up of 4 or 5 key elements. One is parking management, and the plan for the management and supply of parking on the site. A travel plan to change behaviour of the staff and customers over time. Walking and cycling improvements, and improvements to public transport services, and all monitored and managed over time under the travel plan. The team have had initial good discussions with the county and GCP, who are quite supportive of the approach, and we're now moving these discussions on to more detail in the coming weeks. Just a brief summary of the existing travel behaviour. It's relatively high car mode share, probably quite typical of these current uses on the site, but a good base of walking and cycling trips to build upon. So, and there's clear opportunities to try and improve the sustainable travel. So the initial aim that we're thinking of is to reduce the car mode share from about 65% to 55% on a weekday, and 59% to 49% on a weekend. So that's roughly a 10% shift. They may not seem immediately like a big shift, but actually, given the uses on site, which there's a lot of food retail units and big box retail, that's quite a significant shift, and it needs to happen. It will take time to get there, and that'll be our initial target. But it could actually increase from that later as well. Next slide, please. We also estimate that there'll be a 20 to 30% reduction in total daily trips from the current Beehive CRP numbers to the new Beehive CRP numbers, which will definitely help the local networks in the area, and will enable us to put in other features such as cycle lanes and bus lanes that will improve other mode share. And the reason why, the key reasons why this combined parking traffic will be lower is partly because of less Beehive traffic, particularly during the weekdays. There'll be more linked trips and mode shift, and my next slide will cover some of those points. The range we've shown there between low and high really depends upon assumptions about the mode shift we can actually achieve, and we're still discussing that with the county and the city. The next slide, I think. So how do we expect this mode shift in car trip reduction to happen? I mean, there's four key issues really. One is the change in nature of the centre I've described, the look and the feel of the centre, the more local customers using cars for fewer trips, and the better offer on one site, reducing the need to travel. We know from surveys that people already do have linked trips between Beehive and CRP, and with the increased offer on site, we anticipate that will increase. We're looking to improve the bus services. The Beehive are already proposing bus service improvements, and we'd like to build on that to target the more retail requirements for the travel to the area, and obviously better access to bus stops as well. In terms of cycling and walking, David's talked about a new strategic cycle route, which we're considering the options on that, many more cycle parking spaces, and much better crossings and routes for pedestrians. On the other element, the parking numbers, we intend to reduce the ratio of parking to floor area as we increase the floor area quite significantly on the site, so that parking is coordinated with these other efforts to encourage sustainable modes. Next slide. On the parking strategy, we obviously have to provide this balance. We've got a lot of long-term leases that require a minimum parking number that we can't really change, and we want to cater for future use on the site, but we want to reduce the ratio of the provision over time to encourage sustainable travel. So, for example, our current estimates are that we'll probably go from a 1 space per 34 square meters now, existing situation on CRP, to something like 1 space per 40 to 50 in the next 3 to 10 years on the future CRP. We'll obviously also seek to ensure appropriate level of blue badge spaces and electric vehicle parking, and obviously manage it all under a car park management plan. The current plans are for an additional 60 to 160 spaces, which is quite small when you consider the fact of the uses on the site and the future increase in floor area, which is significant, as David has pointed out. Next slide. So I won't go into a lot of detail about the spatial issues, but just a few key points. Is obviously we're aware of the GCP and city cycling bus improvements on Newmarket Road, and we're having discussions regarding these, how and when they will be delivered, how we can coordinate with it, and get better interfaces and crossings of the road and bus stops on that way. Coldham's Lane cycle lanes and side road treatments are currently proposed by the Beehive development, and we'll coordinate with that. And there have also been discussions about a cyclops or other type of junction at Coldham's Lane and the site accesses, which will give better crossing facilities for cyclists and pedestrians. And we will also be considering the greenway and strategic cycle route through the site, as David has pointed out, and linkages and pedestrians and cyclists to Newmarket Road. I've only got a couple more slides. These last two slides are just to remind everybody, this is the current GCP plans, or the latest GCP plans, which have been halted for a little bit on Newmarket Road, with with segregated cycle provision and the changes in some traffic lanes and some movements of bus stops. And the next slide shows the current version of a cycle and pedestrian friendly junction on Coldham's Lane between the Beehive and the CRP site. That's all I have to discuss on transport, but I'm sure that there'll be questions and issues we can cover later on. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you, Athol. So these strategies will be embodied into the framework plan, and the framework plan you can see here will take its lead from the Eastern Gate SPD, which deals with the sites on the corner of Newmarket Road and Coldham's Lane, and it shows similar kinds of information. So the framework plan will illustrate the principles of connectivity and the Cambridge Retail Park Greenway, about public realm and landscaping, about reinforcing street edges, development plots and opportunities for activation, gateways, access points and crossings, and opportunities for visual links and building heights. And we can assess, or we'll be able to assess and demonstrate the improvements and benefits and effectiveness of the framework plan against the 4 Cs. For example, better community with a wider variety of uses, including into the evening, increasing longer dwell times and multi-purpose visits, and better connectivity for pedestrians and cycles and public transport, and responding to climate with an all-electric approach to buildings and better landscape and PVs on new buildings, and improving the character along Newmarket Road and Coldham's Lane, and enhancing public realm. And then in terms of delivering on the framework plan, well, first of all, of course, there's parking, which we've spoken quite a bit about. There are currently approaching 900 surface parking spaces, and Ethel, has already said that needs to increase by a pretty modest amount, and those 900 surface parking spaces will reduce to about 300 surface parking spaces, with another 300 spaces in the southern multi-storey car park, that's site 6, and more than 300 additional ones in the northern car park, and that's at site 2. And then there are the retail relocations. And by the way, of course, this results from several years of discussions and work with the Beehive retailers to ascertain what they want and requirements, etc. So Asda is at site number 1, and then there's Currys, B&M, there's Marks and Spencers, there's Next, there's TK Maxx, and then there's Wren across at site number 9, with Starbucks at site number 11, Locations for hobbycraft and pets at home, as Peter was saying, are being assessed. Site 7 is a 150-bed apart hotel, and Site 12, the proposal is for a new restaurant, leisure and entertainment destination, probably over 3 levels. Site number 10 is for local and smaller local retailers and maybe cafe. And then Site 13 is another opportunity site. And the first new building coming forwards, of course, is the Starbucks Pavilion, with its play space and enhancement of public realm around that pavilion. And it reflects the quality of future proposals that Cambridge can expect from Railpen. And a summary of the proposal covers much. That's the relocation of those valued retailers from the Beehive, new buildings and space for new and different uses, creating a permeable and accessible site with enhanced pathways and cycles and accessibility, and increasing landscape and biodiversity and dwell times, with art and interactive play and new frontages and facades, and improving the character of Newmarket Road and Coldham's Lane, electric vehicle parking, and consolidating some of the surface parking into multi-stories. And finally, the proposed timeline for the known projects on Cambridge Retail Park. And these could come forwards quickly with real changes that people could start to see at Cambridge Retail Park over the next 3 years. The development of the Beehive, of course, depends, first of all, on its key retailers relocating. And for this to happen, we're looking for and targeting a vacant possession, if we're able to, and a start on site at the Beehive by early summer 2027. And that would mean a lot of activity on Cambridge Retail Park before then. So these two sites, we think, are full of fantastic opportunities. And as the nature of retailing is changing and changing, at the moment, we think now is the time to grasp and respond to those opportunities very much. So thank you very much. I think that's my bit, and hopefully we're in time.
Great, thank you, David. So that's a really useful presentation. So I think I'll invite questions from members, please. If you could raise your virtual hands. I see Councillor Dryden, you've raised your hand. Hi, Rob. I'll invite you first to ask a question. Thank you.
Okay. Yes, I was just interested in one little bit that was said about Coldham's Lane going to be from a class as a road, now going to will become a street. What will we notice the difference in the big difference between a road and a street?
Well, I think from so I've got my mic off. Yeah, that's right. I think from it's a perception thing. It's better a road in a way. I think just a big roads implies it might be difficult to cross over. It's got leaky things on it. It's probably fairly poorly defined and things like that. Turning it into a street is something that actually people can walk across. You've got better connections. You've got better crossing points over it. And I think it's that perception thing about from what it is now to where it could go to.
But when you say Coldham's Lane, do you mean all of Coldham's Lane or just the part around the Beehive?
Well, certainly the part around the Beehive, because it's both sides of it, of course, with the Beehive on one side and Cambridge Retail Park on the other side. So sort of between the bridge and up to the corner.
Right, thank you.
Thanks.
Great, thanks. Katie, Councillor Katie Pora.
Thank you very much, Toby. Thank you very much for a very in-depth and succinct presentation, coming in on time. That's brilliant. So obviously there's clearly some positives here in terms of things like moving away from gas to electricity and reuse of buildings, which I think are consistent with our local plan. So I had a few comments that don't necessarily need answering, but just things that occurred as I went through. I use the site as a pedestrian. Certainly both sites, the Beehive and this, are definitely not pedestrian friendly at the moment and very car dominant. So looking at, I think things like public toilets are important. This is going to be a big site. We always mention things like changing places toilets so people with additional needs can use them. So I just wanted to mention that, whether that's separate public toilets or part of a retail offer that can be open to all, that would be important, I think. And obviously when the parking stuff comes forward, looking at whether we need controlled parking zones in areas that don't already have them. I think most of the roads nearby do, but obviously that would be an issue with displacement parking if not. Water, as I'm sure you know, is a huge issue. So I hope that you'd be able to talk about reuse, grey water, blue roofs, those kind of things that we've seen, I think, at the Grafton Centre and other sites, sort of making use of their quite industrial architecture to enhance water retention. I think I also wanted to highlight parking. Obviously, some of the uses here, you do need a car or some means of getting stuff off if you get a home base or one of those equivalents, or Asda, you might need a big car at times. I would really welcome the inclusion of car club spaces, which would allow people the option of walking there and then using the car as part of the existing car clubs across the city. And I know obviously the parking on the flat is not ideal, and I can understand why you'd want to look at multi-storey car parks, but I hope, as we've said previously, you'd be able to look at how they might be converted in the future should car usage drop. And obviously, I'm assuming you're already talking to Little about their flat spaces, so whether there's any negotiation there. But I think if you want to have decent, accessible things, you need to have secure, covered cycle parking. So, and for me, that would be at least as convenient as the cars. So I'd be very interested when you come back in future to hear more about that, as well as things like e-bike and e-scooter parking. Because again, if you want it to be sustainable, people will be using those, and you probably don't want them littered all over the site. And obviously the buses, it isn't particularly well served at the moment in terms of connectivity, sort of apart from along Newmarket Road. So again, I don't know what's coming forward with the Beehive yet. That's not come to committee, but obviously looking at how you improve public transport. So those are just some comments which I hope are useful. Thank you.
Fantastic.
David or Athol, did you want to kind of clarify anything in relation to those comments, particularly around transport?
No, they're all useful comments. So we've obviously had some thoughts about some of those things, and they'll be worked up in the coming weeks. So thank you very much. That's very helpful.
I think also one thing, Councillor, is also the cargo bikes and the electric cargo bikes as well.
Yes.
Which is a regular feature too. So thank you for that. That's great.
That's great. Okay, Councillor Naomi Bennett.
Thank you. I intend to be very brief because I've already had an opportunity to raise a lot of my questions, but I just wondered, bearing in mind we have some local residents on the call, whether you could go into more detail on the improvements you want to make at Coldham's Lane opposite, running past the entrance to New Street, going up to Henley Road, and also any crossing points that you think are coming forward on Newmarket Road. Thank you.
If you don't mind, I can try and respond. Thank you very much. I don't have any detail today, but I'm aware that with the current Beehive application, there are draft designs for improvements to Coldham's Lane and the junction, and we'll be, obviously the city and the county are looking at those together, and there will be coordination with us and that work. So I can't really give you much details other than to say that the current plans are for cycle lanes along that stretch, as well as improvements to the side roads to make it easier for pedestrians and others to cross those and make it look better as well. That's my understanding of that. In terms of Newmarket Road bus stops, I'm aware that there's some discussion about the potential movement of one stop at the moment, not very far away from where it is, but I think the GCP designs propose a couple of changes to bus stops, not dramatic, but just to fit in with the wider things. But those aren't by any means settled yet, and we'll be discussing that with GCP and getting a coordinated approach. So I think it's too early to give detail, but we'll certainly involve the local community when these things are discussed, and to make sure they understand them and are aware of the changes and can comment on them as well.
Actually, my query was about pedestrian crossings on Newmarket Road, not
sorry,
on bus stops. Sorry.
Sorry, my apologies. Yes, as the plan shows, there are the crossings currently are not very good, and the GCP proposals have at least 2 or 3 new crossings, including rather than staggered sort of sheep pen crossings there at the moment, they're trying to propose straight across crossings of Newmarket Road, and we will be coordinating with that approach. There might be slight tweaks to it, but those are our intention as well. So we'll be working with the GCP on those proposals. So definitely, the intention is to improve the crossings of Newmarket Road, make them as much as possible straight across to reduce pedestrian crossing time and make it a safe place to cross.
Thank you. That's everything I wanted to ask.
Thank you, Councillor Bennett. Councillor Katie Thornborough.
Yeah, I'm very pleased that you're talking to the main retailers at the Beehive Centre, and that if hopefully they will be relocated before the Beehive Centre operates, demolished and rebuilt. Will any of those retailers go back to the Beehive Centre? And if not, what are you proposing for the offer for residents? I don't know whether this should be coming to the next session, but we're talking a lot about moving retail from the Beehive Centre to this site. But what if anything, will you be offering back at the Beehive Centre? That's one point. And the other point is, I'm very interested in how people might travel from the existing train station, so from the main train station and Cambridge North to this location, mainly because I used to live just outside Cambridge to the north, and I would always try to avoid Newmarket Road during the kind of workout, during our busy hours, because it was just impossible to drive down, impossible. And I'm really concerned. I think that is by far the biggest challenge to deal with, is the traffic and congestion. So is there a way to utilise the main stations, but also I've learnt from Anthony Carpen, who's on the call, that once in the past the Beehive Centre, with a previous location, actually had a train station. The trains used to stop and unload and load at that point. And if it's not possible to have a train station somewhere along on either of these sites, is it possible to future-proof, to allow for possible changes in the future? Because we don't know what might happen with light rail. The mayor and deputy mayor recently at the combined authority did say that they were going to begin to look into light rail. So it's not planned at the moment, but you never know what might come forward. Thank you.
Shall I pick up the first point there? In terms of the retailers decanting from Beehive to CRP, these are the retailers that take big box format. So CRP is a suitable location for them. The future retail in Beehive won't be of that scale. It will be much more local amenity stores that size. So I don't think any of them will be relocating back. These will be permanent moves into CRP. And the leasing up of Beehive, it's too early to talk about who those tenants are going to be. We know the kind of mix that we think would be really helpful to the scheme and to local people, but we don't know the retailers themselves yet. I might ask Athol just to talk about the point about access from the station. But in terms of the future proofing, we're very keen on public transport, easing access into the site. It's absolutely in our interest. So we're very supportive, and we'll help where we can help. Athol.
Great. Thank you. Thanks, Peter. Yes, so just a couple of points. Just on the station point of view, I agree with Peter, and we'll have a chat with the county and GCP about long-term proposals and what is required to do, as you say. I mean, the one thing I'm aware of is that the distance between Cambridge Station and Cambridge North isn't very long, and so a new station here would face some challenges in terms of that. But certainly, we can talk to them and look into that. In terms of access to the railway station, the current Beehive proposals will I think make a big difference in terms of sustainable transport access as well as the CRP proposals, because the two things will happen. One is that there'll be much better bus services from the train station into this area, into this local area, and secondly, the greenway running all the way from Beehive all the way up through CRP will also make sustainable transport access much easier. I actually cycled that last week, and it's not too difficult a journey to make from the main station. In terms of car access, we're not creating any better, necessarily better conditions for cars, but with the exception that, as I mentioned, we're aiming to reduce traffic generally between the current situation and the new situation. So hopefully that should make the management of traffic in peak times better in this area, which may help some of those coming by car as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Athol. So just to recap, so that was a 20. The aim was a 20 to 30% drop in overall trips across both sites. Is that right?
Yes, that's the current estimates on daily traffic. Yes, that's correct.
Okay, thank you. I'll turn to Councillor Martin Smart now, please.
Yeah, thanks. Sorry, my sort of electronic hand isn't working, I don't think. So thanks for the presentation. Excuse me. On the face of it, you seem very brave investing in retail in this location in the current climate. But I guess, and tell me if I'm wrong, but this isn't really an investment in retail, I presume. It's more an investment in the other site to develop your innovative site. And that's what's driving this. So my question really is about what residents get out of this. So you mentioned at one stage, one of you said that it was for 10 to 20 years. I don't know how long, what sort of timeline you expect this development to last for, or whether there are future possibilities for the site because one bit of the site is for hotel accommodation anyway. So just to put a bit of an edge on that, I mean, residents, I think of the site as the beehive. That's the word that gets used. I'm not sure that CRP comes up in general conversation or Cambridge Retail Park. I think a lot of people probably think of it as the same thing. Mm-hmm. So just on that, you might want to think of a new name perhaps for the new site, something that people can say to one another rather than an acronym. And what is it? What is in it for residents? And I mean, when I say residents, I mean the residents that elected me in Cambridge residents, because a lot of these people at those centres come in from South Cambs, and we're less interested in those, or I am anyway, as a representative of the people in Cambridge. And just in terms of reducing car parking, which is an essential element of this, or cars, are you going to charge for car parking? And I think Councillor Bajan wants to ask a bit about that as well. So any response to any of that?
I'll start there.
Yeah. Okay.
I mean, it is a retail destination. It's going to remain a retail destination. It is with our, within the constraints of the site, we're aiming to improve as best we can to secure that future. The leases we're hoping to secure here will be, in the main sort of 15 to 20 years, but they're up to 25 years. So we don't have a plan for this beyond 25 years because 25 years is a long investment horizon. We are, we're aware that things will change in the future. So what we're doing, in our current plans, is future gating to see where flexibility could come about. We're looking at making sure that leases are as flexible as they can be, so that future changes hopefully can be made to keep up with current trends. But it is a retail-led destination. The intention is to improve dwell time so that the space is not dead at sort of the end and beginning of the day, so we get more use out of the site, and journeys are sort of spread across the day. And on balance, it's a retail destination which has been enhanced, and I think a lot of the retailers there are popular. In the public consultation we've done, people have been very concerned about retailers both from Beehive and some of those that are currently within CRP. So we're doing our best to try and secure those that are particularly popular and that have a future.
I'd add to that, Peter, by as well, saying there aren't really any new retailers here. A lot of because some of it is backfilling into existing spaces within Cambridge Retail Park, but pretty much all of those sort of sites there have retailer names on them that want to stay and want to relocate. And so that consolidation, is sort of a necessary part. And then there are those other complementary, pieces. I think Peter, just in terms of demand for the leisure and the entertainment there, I think the indications are that there is strong demand for that as well, which is complementary uses then, and would help take the use of the site, into the evening. The hotel, seems to be one that you think is also would be very attractive from that point of view. And I think in terms of improving it as a place for residents and what have you, I think the big picture piece, I think, of taking this greenway and linking both the sites there, helping to link with the Riverside Chisholm Trail and things like that. Those, I think, are those public realm led pieces that we can do.
Sorry, Peter, do you want to cover the question about charging, or would you like me to, or car park charging? So just basically, to my knowledge, I'm sure Peter will correct me. At the moment, the leases for the retailers doesn't really permit charging on the site. It's written into their leases, the long leases, that there is they've got to have their parking. But obviously that there are penalties if you stay longer than a certain time on the site, and they are enforced. So I think for the immediate future, that's difficult to change given those leases. But obviously we appreciate your point that really what you're suggesting is we're trying to reduce the car use on the site and make sure the local networks are managed effectively. And I think with the traffic reduction proposals, that should go some way towards that point.
Great, thank you. Martin, have you got any supplementary questions?
Well, it was one that was really the main question I had, really, which wasn't really addressed, which is this. So to put it another way, is this development, is this site, is this use viable without the other use on the other site? So biolabs, innovative, whatever you want to call it. Is this a viable application as a standalone application without the other thing?
Yes, I mean, just to be clear, this is a number of applications coming forward for individual units, but we're coming up with a framework to ease that process because there'll be a number of them coming forward. We've got strong interest in each of those spaces as a result of what's happening across the road. Even if Beehive didn't happen, this will happen. There isn't sufficient demand to have both, and no matter what happens, this will happen. We'll be bringing this forward, and Rutland are committed to this Cambridge Retail Park framework.
Yeah, subject to planning permission. Thanks very much.
Okay, thank you, Martin. Councillor Dave Bagent.
Yeah, thank you. Can I raise the point about, would like to talk a bit about transport. The Newmarket Road's going to become more restricted. It is already congested badly. So the changes that are coming with new cycle lanes and things will make Newmarket Road worse for transport. You're bringing in 2,000 new jobs in the labs, which is potentially good, I suppose, in one aspect, but I'm not commenting about that. How will the 1,060 car parking spaces be allocated? Because if a lot of the staff are going to get them, that's going to increase rush hour movements. And if a lot of the stores are going to get them, then that will be a sort of transitional movement of traffic. So perhaps you could just give me some ideas about how you see this car parking as being shared.
I mean, I'll start on that, Alpha, if that's okay. I think the car park is managed as it stands. We'll review changes we can make to that management within the confines of the leases to make it perform as well as it can perform. So, I mean, there's no plans to change the arrangements there because this is captured in all of the existing leases, and most of the park is leased up, which is what holds that. But we can make adjustments to free parking time, that type of thing, and so we can do that to help manage the space.
So just to add to that, so let's just take each site separately. So I won't comment particularly on Beehive because I think there's a separate planning application for that. But the parking there will be restricted and managed for a very low level of use by those staff members. Those people can't really park on the Cambridge Retail Park because there's a time limit. There's a monitored time limit that basically precludes commuters from using the spaces on the Cambridge retail park. So I think that the Cambridge Retail Park parking is primarily for the customers of the retail park and some of the employees on the retail park, and it will be managed as such. And in terms of, I mean, basically your concerns are about Newmarket Road and the traffic congestion. And as I said earlier, we think that the aim to reduce the overall traffic by broadly between 20 and 30% will help to keep the Newmarket Road flowing, not increase its capacity or things like that, but basically to keep it under in an appropriate level with the help of GCP and the city. So I think there are things that together we are doing to help that position, but and Cambridge Retail Park will not have Beehive employees parking on it, so there won't be an increase in
okay, so there'll be 160 new car parking spaces on that site. So why do you need those? I mean, we would be hoping for reduction in car parking spaces. I recognise that you're sort of revitalising the car park to use for retail and consumer use, but you're now also increasing the car parking by 160. So that's not an advantage. That is, well, I'm not supposed to comment. Carry on.
Yeah, no. It's a good point that you raised. I mean, so just thinking kind of globally about the two sites, there are about 1,800, give or take, parking spaces on Beehive plus CRP. The new CRP would have something like 1,000. So the overall number of car parking spaces for retail use is going quite dramatically down, and there's more land uses on CRP than is currently in the combined site. So actually the overall effect of it, we think, is about, adding a few more spaces is just to try and deal with primarily the weekend peaks when there's a bit more demand. We certainly don't want to encourage car travel, but we need to balance car travel with other modes. And obviously we'll take your point on board, and we'll be working through that point with the city and the county as we progress the discussions. But thank you for that.
But you are increasing the car parking space. On the one hand, you separate the two sites, and then on the other hand, you join them up again. But on that site, as a separate site, the car parking will be increased, so therefore the traffic will increase, won't it?
Yes, I agree. But in general terms, traffic will go down. From the current situation, it'll go down.
Well, it depends on how many movements, doesn't it? Because as this is retail, I mean, each one of those spaces could be used 12 times in a day, which could actually increase the amount of car use.
Thank you. We'll obviously have to provide the information to you to help you to convince you that this is the case. But we are working through with the county and the city these estimates. But at the moment, those estimates indicate what I referred to. But we'll take that on board. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. That's obviously going to need some further exploration. So, Councillor Richard Robertson.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you for the presentation. Continuing on the car parking for a little while, I've got this point and another one to raise. At the moment, you're proposing 650, say, spaces in the multi-storey car parks. Presumably, you're going to have to charge for those. But you can't charge for the car parking on the surface. Well, not charge, but elements of it anyway. Yet you've also got free car parking at the Tesco's and B&Q. So it doesn't seem to me to be very viable as a coherent strategy. Could you clarify?
We're not charging for any car parking spaces.
Multi-story will be free.
Yes.
Oh, amazing. All right. One other point is that at the moment, to help Dave understand, if the Beehive does get permission for change of use, all the car parking there will go, and the shoppers who used to go there will go into the, presumably it can be targeted to go into the retail park. So I think you have to recognise that the change is quite a lot. However, my second point is about Coldham's Lane. Now, Coldham's Lane is an important part of the road structure of Cambridge. It's almost a part of the ring road, if you like. A lot of traffic comes down Coldham's Lane, and there'll be more if Mill Road Bridge is shut. You've got the plan of a greenway crossing this road, yet without a bridge, as far as I can see. Are you seriously going to stop the traffic moving along Coldham's Lane while all your 4,650 workers on the Beehive site move in and out by walking or driving? And all this traffic coming, should be able to move along Coldham's Lane, surely needs to have, if you're going to allow it to move freely, you're going to have a bridge for the pedestrians and cyclists to get over that road. Has this not been given some thought?
I mean, I'll respond very briefly on this, because the discussion on that particular junction is being undertaken with the city and GCP, and I'll obviously take your points away with me. But I think from the broad point of view is that the general movement is not towards bridges, particularly in a constrained area like this, because with a bridge you need to have disabled access, probably cycle access, and the amount of land that you need to take up for those ramps and things, and the appearance of it in that location would probably be not what really is desired. However, we do think that the current proposals for crossings there can be worked to enable the traffic to still move down Coldham's Lane, and also provide really good pedestrian and cycle access, because a lot of those thousands of new employees that you're referring to are not coming by car. They are coming by other modes, buses, walking and cycling. So we will obviously take that away, these points, but at the moment we think that the current proposals are broadly the right approach and can still make Coldham's Lane work.
Well, it will be interesting to see. Anyway, thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you. I mean, presumably there's some kind of modelling that's been done of that new junction, which would show flow rates. I'm assuming the question is partly framed in the context of some of the congestion that we've seen around one of the newer Cyclops roundabouts, just off Queen Elizabeth Way on Milton Road, that has caused quite a lot of congestion in that part of the town. So I think that's certainly something that may need to be explored in detail as part of the application for the Beehive when we get there in February. Right, Councillor Mike Todd-Jones.
Yeah, thanks, Toby. And apologies for being a bit late for the presentation. I'll have to keep my camera off because the Wi-Fi is not very reliable at the moment. I just had going back to car parking. I just had a quick query, and apologies, it might have been covered earlier, but it was about the mix of car parking proposed for the multi-stories in terms of blue badge holder bays, but also in particular electric vehicle charging points and spaces to accommodate them. And I just wondered what the planned mix, particularly in terms of electrical vehicle charging points and bays, was proposed to be. Thank you.
I mean, I'll try and respond to that. So obviously these plans are still being worked through and are still being discussed with the city and county, who are the standards for these different bays. But on a disabled point of view, both multi-storey car parks will have the standard percentage of disabled bays required for the land use, approximately 6%, I think it is, on each bays. In terms of electric vehicle charging, certainly at the moment, the intention is to try and keep charging points on surface car parking rather than put them in the multi-storey car parks. But that is still going to be discussed and debated, with the city and county. But that's the current point, is to try and keep them on the remaining surface level car parks, rather than the multi-story. That it may make them a little bit more accessible as well to people. That they're actually in the open and in those areas. And there was a discussion that at least one or two of the disabled spaces should also be electric vehicle charging points as well. From the design review panel, had that suggestion as well.
Mike, does that answer your questions? Do you have any follow-ups at all?
No, Toby. I mean, yes, I think there is scope for electric vehicle charging point in multi-story car parks. I've seen them elsewhere, but I do take the point that that's going to be something that can be reviewed. So thank you.
Great. And Councillor Robertson, I see you've still got your hand up. Have you got another question, or is that you do? Thank you. Do you want to ask your question, Richard?
Sorry, I lost my mouse. All right. Just a thought occurred to me. These multi-story car parks are going to have to be built early on in this whole phase scheme, isn't it? Aren't they? Because otherwise we won't necessarily be there in time to provide the service that we need. So can they guarantee they'll be part of the early stages of development of the site?
Yeah, there's a very intricate balance between maintaining the existing space requirements for retailers. So yeah, it's a complicated equation, but they will have to come in at exactly the right time, otherwise it will limit development of our plans.
Yeah, so we don't want a load of development of new shops and things without any of these car parks being built. They've got to be built early on, surely.
Exactly. So the retailers themselves will insist on exactly the same thing. They won't come into a park that hasn't got sufficient parking.
True. Thank you.
And Councillor Katie Pura, you've raised your hand.
Just briefly, thanks. Yeah, to pick up on the multi-story car parks, I think the idea of at least having passive charging installed, given that in the next 10, 20 years, all cars will be electric. We have got Park Street car park, for example, where we have got the charging things. I think it's also an income stream, in terms of being able to rent those out. But I just think it would be a real shame to build multi-story car parks that don't have any, at least passive charging, so they could be converted in the future, particularly if in the future there's any chance of that surface car park perhaps not needing to be so big in the longer term. It would be a shame not to have that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. We recognise that actually we are going to put in containment so that we can easily add these later where demand requires.
Okay, thanks, Richard. You've still got your hand up.
No, it's a legacy.
It's a legacy hand. We've got a couple of minutes. I know Anthony Carpin, member of the public, suggested he may want to ask a question. We do have some time, Anthony, if you're still with us and you wanted to ask a question of the developer team.
Sorry, Toby, I think Councillor Martin Smart has his hand up as well.
Let Anthony go first, Toby. It's okay. I can wait.
Yeah. Anthony, are you still with us? Doesn't seem to be. Okay, Martin, over to you then.
Yeah, thanks for letting me come back. So, yeah, you're earning your money today, I guess, guys, aren't you? A lot more robust interrogation, but obviously we want the best for our residents. I'm sure we all appreciate that. So, I asked about the buildings. I just wanted to add a bit more about traffic management as well, which has already been spoken about, but I had a couple of things to add. So, firstly, when Milton Road was redone recently, and talking about the developments that might happen at the top of Milton Road in Cambridge, we talked a lot about a trip budget, and that's a real thing that's happening as far as I'm aware still. So is there any talk of a trip budget with these proposals? Because that would be a thing that would affect the conversation you have with Councillor Bajan. And secondly, one of you in the presentation talked about county highways being quite supportive. So the quite is quite significant, I think, in that context. So could you talk a bit more about what the quite means?
Okay, I'll quickly I'll try and respond to both points. So we're actually right. We've only just commenced real discussions with GCP and the county on on the highways and transport matters. In fact, we've got meetings this afternoon. It's the second set of meetings, but basically, as I mentioned to the councillors in the presentation, the aim is to reduce the traffic numbers by that 20 to 30%. So in effect, it will be a form of a trip budget, and we'll discuss with them, how that works and how that looks. In terms of the quiet, I mean, probably there was just a use of a term. I mean, certainly we presented to them the overall strategy and the overall pictures a few weeks ago, and there were no concerns with it at all, really. And there was just the views from them that, oh, great, that sounds really good. Can we get a bit more detail on this? Can we have a session on the cycle route options? And can we talk about the interface with the GCP? So there was nothing raised by the county and GCP so far that was in any way negative. It was more, it all sounds good. Let's now work up a bit more detail and start to take these things forward, in that way. So yes, that's the quiet. There's no, it wasn't meant to be descriptive
Right.
of a caged approach to it.
Thank you, Atul. Thank you.
That's good.
Great. And Councillor Bennett.
I just wanted to say that, it's very clear that you've done a lot of work and it's a very complex proposal. So I just wanted to thank you for presenting it as clearly as you have.
Thank you.
Thank you. So I can't see that any other hands are raised. Members, now's your opportunity. Otherwise, I will close the meeting. Councillor Katie Thornborough.
I'd be really interested going forward to hear about how you might consider future-proofing the whole of the site and everything that you're doing, because retail has changed so much, continues to change so much. It's changed so much since the pandemic, and it's interesting to see where it might be going, and also with the hopefully with a reduction in fossil fuel cars, etc., it may be that you could future-proof the multi-stories for something in the future. It'd be really interesting how you might deal with higher temperatures for weather and colder temperatures, all of these things that might mean that these become adaptable, or for new technologies to come in, so that we know that this will be, if this comes forward, it will be successful as possible, and therefore to try and keep it in the future means real adaptability is really important. So ideas about how you might do that. I know we do have a policy about adaptability and sustainable design. So it'd be something interesting to hear about going forward. Thank you very much.
I won't try to answer all of that just now, but it's certainly something we're very aware of. And Railpen are long-term holders of assets. They are looking at the long-term horizon for this. So all of those things are incredibly important.
It's probably just worth mentioning again that most of the buildings on the site at the moment, of course, are steel frame, large span steel frame, and so of course they are being used. And the other one, of course, is that there's up to 20 meters of fill across the site as well, which is quite an interesting, aspect of it as well. So they're not insurmountable at all, but you're absolutely right. Thanks very much.
Okay, thank you. I think on that basis, I will call it a wrap. Thank you to the developer team for coming and presenting, for councillors for asking questions, and I'm sure it would have been of interest for members of the public. We will, this is being recorded, so we'll post a recording of this session on our website, and Dean will also circulate the slide pack that you've seen today. So thank you all again, and see some of you soon.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you. Goodbye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye. Bye.
Bye.